I'm Bob Cobb from the Bassmaster, and this is LD and the MC.
Well, I am going to acknowledge the elephant in the room that just happened because I feel like I need to. As you just heard the legendary Mr. Bob Cobb say, this is LD
and the MC. Bob maybe put a little more emphasis on the MC part. I don't know if you heard it or if I'm hearing things, but I feel like, thanks, Bob.
I'm going to be honest. When I originally heard the clip, when you sent it and said, hey, man, I'm fixing to make your day, I was a little jealous. I could tell he was kind of like, who is LD? MC. He was very excited about the MC part.
He's my Uncle Bob. I mean, honestly, me and him have the coolest relationship. And I mean, that voice, I mean, if you're listening to this, there's a good chance that voice woke you up, every weekend, whether you waited till, 6 o'clock. I remember it used to air in the evening on TNN, and it's freaking Bob freaking Cobb. I mean, so whether we do any good or bad with this little project we're doing together, Duncan, is Bob Cobb did our intro. We made it once.
I absolutely am going to have that on a loop forever. I don't care if we ever do another episode. I basically used you to get to Bob Cobb. So
mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. All right. I'm going to bring up another mission, if that's okay. You obviously being Canadian, everybody knows that, a northerner to us Southern folk. And sometimes there can be a little confusion about the cultures. Do you think that's fair to say there, MC? Are there confusing cultural differences?
At times there is. I mean, I kind of feel like you're totally going in the wrong direction here. I mean, it's only show 2, and we normally start with Mom's Basement Moment, and you're not giving it to me. I mean, I know you got a good one.
I got a good one, and I'm going to get to the Mom's Basement Moment, but this is written down at the top of the Low Budget Live notebook, and it speaks to me, okay? And I got to get to this because
I'm sorry.
Today is Election Day in the United States. I don't know.
I had not heard.
I don't know what you guys do on Election Day, but it's there's so much division, and you and I've talked about this, and there's one thing, Dave, that a fan pointed out that I think brings us all together no matter what country we're in, and that is gravy.
It really is. I mean, I don't trust somebody who doesn't enjoy gravy. I mean, if you got a medical reason that you can't imbibe in the gravy, I'll give you a pass. But I mean, if you don't like gravy, I don't like you.
I'm here for that. Like I'm here for discriminating against people that don't like gravy.
But your gravy's weird.
Okay, why?
I mean, it's total. I mean, I do have a gravy story, as a matter of fact. I mean, years ago,
I'm here for it.
Going to Springfield, Missouri, because I'm going to call on them. I mean, this is like 20 something years ago. First time I ever went to Springfield, Missouri, and I'm driving down with a buddy of mine, Jim, and Jim's just a big fishing geek and obsessed with the sport. So I'm like, you want to go to Springfield with me? He's like, let's go. So we get in this car, and the whole way down, we're seeing signs for Steak and Shake. And I'm like, hey, man, I like both steak and shake. I mean, it sounds like a perfect situation for me.
It's really heaven.
It's truly. And, I mean, being a Canadian, we had not seen this. So we we're like, we got to go to Steak and Shake. No matter what happens, we're going to Steak and Shake before we go back across this border. So our trip is weaning down. We finally make it to a Steak and Shake, and we sit down. And in Canada, I mean, a lot of times we'll have fries and gravy, which sounds weird, right? But well, no, poutine's a whole other level. That thing, okay, that happens at 3 a.m. You don't drink poutine, or you don't eat poutine without drinking. I mean, it's kind of a prerequisite. It's like ice fishing. You can't do one without the other. I mean, who ice fishes and doesn't drink? Who eats poutine without drinking first? But
can we say poutine a few more times?
Poutine
for all the Southerners. Explain what that is real quick to cut you off. What is poutine?
Poutine is how it's pronounced. Poutine.
Okay.
Yes, you have to be poutine.
Very French.
Yes. Patrick Sabille. Yes. But the poutine, basically what it is it's French fries. and then they're smothered with cheese curds. And then on top of the cheese curds, you smother it with gravy, so it melts it and it makes a melty, mungy mush ball that you have to
drunk food.
You eat when you're drunk. It's like, this is the greatest thing ever. But back to my original story. So we go to the Steak and Shake, and I'm like, I want fries and gravy. I mean, you sell French fries, and I said, can I get some gravy? And she's like, no, we don't. We don't. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Do you have gravy? She said, yes. And I said, well, you do have French fries, right? And she said, yes. And I said, well, can I get one of each? And she said, well, no, we can't serve them together. So me and this waitress have a debate back and forth, and it goes on for quite a while. But ultimately, she brings me gravy, right? And it sits down in front of me, and the French fries are there, and the gravy comes, but the gravy's white. And in Canada, that's not the color of gravy, right? Yeah. So I'm like, it's biscuit gravy. And I'm like, so I push the gravy aside and finish my meal. And she comes afterwards to see us at the table. And I'm gone by this point. My buddy's, sitting there, and I went to the restroom, and she comes up and she's like, he didn't even touch his gravy. Are you kidding me? And he argued for like 20 minutes about freaking gravy, and he didn't even touch it. There's not even a French fry through it. And he said, well, where you're from, gravy's brown. And she looked at us like, she threw up in her mouth a little bit. But yeah, it's a very different situation. I mean, nobody in Canada has gravy for breakfast. I mean, we eat it at 3 a.m., not 6 a.m.
We eat it on mashed potatoes and biscuits, the same kind of gravy. Sometimes you eat it on chicken fried steak. I don't even know if that's a Canadian thing or not, but I feel like
explain the chicken fried steak to me, because to me it's so good.
So first of all, I've never seen
fried steak.
I've never seen a chicken fry anything, right? Like that's the dad joke of the day. Never seen a chicken really cook anything, right? I don't know what chicken fried steak is. I called it mystery meat in school when they would have it on the lunch menu. You just go with it. If you slather it in enough gravy, you're good to go. But I think the point, Dave, that I'm trying to make is the world needs more common ground. And if that's gravy, I'm here for it.
Heck yeah. Let's do it. More gravy. Let's all be gravy to you.
Let's all weigh 700 pounds and have terrible cholesterol. But we'll do it together. And I think that's the key. Dave, I want to send you right to the Mom's Basement moment now that I stalled with gravy talk, because this week's Mom's Basement moment for me is a little different. I'm going to let you jump in with yours first, and I've got a statement to make on mine.
Number one, I can't wait to hear yours. But number two, mine's a good one. I went a different direction this week. I mean, number one, thank you to all of the people that watched our first LD in the MC. I mean, it sounds weird when we say it ourselves, but LDMC, first one that you guys watched, it thank you. I mean, it'd be nice if a few more of you would watch it on the Facts of Fishing channel. I mean, it seems to be being dominated by Duncan's people, and that's cool. I like you guys. I mean, wherever you watch it. But amazing comments, amazing feedback, questions, everything. We're going to deal with it all. But one of these comments stood out, and it came from David Zellers. And I mean, it was a lot of fun. This show is like catfish snot stuck to the carpet in my boat. Can't get it out of my head. Love it. I mean, how can't you mention a comment like that? You write crap like that below this video, and I'm going to talk about it.
We're going to read it. Yeah, Don't throw the negative at us. We're going to read every one of those instead of any negative. That was a beautiful comment. And I saw today, if you watched the first episode, we did our Mom's Basement moment. Go back and check out episode 1. If you missed it, for sure, go watch it on the Facts of Fishing channel.
Yeah, come on over. Hit a sub or dinger or whatever you do.
Yeah, go over there and hit the little belly bell. But I talked about a comment I got from a man named Keith Pate. And when you're wrong, you got to just come out with it, right? And I accused this man of being a fake internet troll with a fake profile picture. And today, minutes before the MC joined me via Zoom, Mr. Keith Pate himself commented back and said, "Hey, man, I'm a real person. And he is offended by internet fake trolls. And he says he listens to everything Luke Duncan puts out every week. And he was just making some points that he disagreed with me from time to time. And you know what? That's okay. That's what makes this world go around. So, Keith Pate, if you're listening to LD and the MC episode number 2, I hope you find yourself in front of a big bowl of gravy, my friend.
I'm gonna give him some look. We didn't plan this. Some cowbell. I got props. We got freaking props. Cowbell.
Yes. Moving on.
What's our next topic?
For me, Dave, I think we can't ignore. There's another elephant in the room that we've got to discuss. Everybody wants to know your thoughts, especially on this topic. But something that came up in multiple comments last week, which is something we're going to lean on, fan comments. You guys make sure that you're commenting questions. We're going to try to get to as many of them as we can. But something that is overwhelming right now in the sport of bass fishing is the topic of scheduling. And it is a difficult topic. It is a difficult process that these companies go through, whether it be Bassmaster, FLW, RIP, FLW, MLF, NPFL, whatever, team tournaments. It is a very difficult process, especially in this COVID world. It's hard getting these towns locked down, but I want to touch on scheduling and the issues within scheduling with you, Mr. Mercer.
I mean, I think there's a lot more to scheduling than people give it. Honestly, people, why don't you just come to in May, they are on fire here.
That's right.
Where's on fire in May? Everywhere. Pretty much everywhere that you can fish is on fire in May. But there's so much more. And trust me, as an angler, man, that's what made me, that was one of the reasons I fell in love with the Elite Series. I mean, as if I wasn't a big enough Bassmaster fan, when the Elite Series started, it was all about big fish at the right time of year. And I got to defend Bass a little bit on this because, I mean, that's where we were headed this year. I mean, if you look at the last few tournaments, I mean, they literally, we went to Disneyland when the roller coasters were closed. It wasn't our choice. I mean, it was a COVID deal, but I think that I think that's one of the cool things about competition. I think you'll see more when you think about this. You'll see more drive to go to those big fish fisheries. You know what I mean? To get to the right location, just because it's that much more important. That, we're competing with another company. They're competing. You want to put out the best product possible. But I think there's a lot more involved than people think. I mean, you have to have the support of the city, there's so many pieces involved in it. It's not just as simple as going to this lake. And then the big piece that changed over the last number of years is coverage. Just as simple as, can you go there? And I mean, it's great to go to Zapata, but it's literally like running a bass tournament in Kuwait. That's what it feels like. I mean, we had a freaking dust storm the last time we were there. It's strange, but there's a lot involved in it. The one thing that I hate, though, obviously MLF introduced their schedule, you know what I mean? And I'm not even going to address, the classic thing yet, but I will address the fact that, man, we're cannibalizing each other, and that drives me crazy. As an industry, you keep hearing everybody say, we want to grow the sport, make the sport bigger, and I agree, we all do. But you're not going to make it bigger by cannibalizing each other. If you look at, one example is Waddington, New York, that part of the world. And obviously, this year that changed, we went down to Clayton but you look at that event in Waddington and how celebrated it is and how special that event is to the sport of bass fishing. You know what I mean? Those crowds, the excitement, everything that sells to everybody in the world. And now I see MLF's got an event in Messina, which Messina is roughly 15 minutes up the road from Waddington. We're both going to end up with lesser events than we would have at one time. You know what I mean? And I kind of hate that. And I'm not pointing a finger at them. You know what I mean? It's just the way it's going to work. But it's one of the things that I mean, I'd love to see them go somewhere else and make a big event like that Waddington event, and if we have several of those happening around the world, and then I mean, I'll be realistic, we'd probably end up doing an event there in the not too distant future too. So I mean, it just kind of sucks, but there's a lot involved in schedule. It's not as simple as just come to our town, our lake this time of year.
Yeah, just because your lake has great fishing and a boat ramp doesn't mean that you can have a major event. Just because, I mean, I've always said it's like the circus coming to town. When you set these events up, there are so much more that goes into these events than just show up and start casting for bass. Like, that's just how it works, man. And you've got to have facilities for the tournament crew to stay at. You've got to have the right kind of places, lodging for the anglers, their families, marshals, or if you're having an event with co-anglers, there's so much more that goes into it than just, show up and fish. Like I said, something that frustrates me, and I've talked about it on LBL some, is people, we're going to the same old lakes all the time. And I get it, right? As an angler, when I fished FLW, I would get frustrated. We're going to Beaver Lake again. Great. Because they went there year after year after year after year. That event, though, in fairness, was never the same from one year to the next. It was not the same event. So if you're a fan of the sport, it was really cool seeing how they broke it down when it was 12 feet high, when it was 12 feet low, when they were spawning there. I mean, it is a different playing field, even if it's, quote, the same lake. It's a different playing field every year. And I think that's the same. I've said that about the BPT schedule for next year. They're going to some lakes at different times. They're going to the Harris Chain in like May. We've never seen a major event there. This year, they did the heavy hitters thing on Kissimmee in June. That's cool to me for a Florida tournament. I get gagged out on Florida in January and February. That does kind of burn me out, but mixing it up, man, it's so cool. That's what I thought was beautiful, and a lot of people might not have liked it about the Bassmaster schedule this year. Thank you, COVID.
I loved it.
Thank you, COVID, for that. The fall events, dude, this has been so crazy. And it extends even into the opens. We look at a guy like Jason Christie over a 100-point lead, dude, in these fall events in that AOI, completely erased last week at Cherokee. And the same thing with Clark Windlet at Chick on the Elite Series. Flip-flops. And I said that when you guys came south after the Northern Swing, I said, watch the points. It's fixing to change. And it has. Huge.
And it will continue to, and it's just because it's not because we're in the north. It's not because we're in the south. It's because we're at a time of year where you can bomb. And the opportunity to fail exists. The opportunity to fail on Lake St. Clair, in Waddington, the Thousand Islands, Oneida, it doesn't matter where we've been up north. It just doesn't exist.
Not like that.
No, like even the guys that don't make the cuts in those tournaments drive home and brag to their buddies about the giant smallmouth they caught.
The greatest fishing of their life. Yeah.
Yeah. So the opportunity of failure is what's opening up those spots. But I will tell you this. It's Jason Christie, and just watch.
And I kind of injected that into our scheduling talk, but it made sense to me in my head, Dave.
I know.
It's a scary place. It's a scary
place. What this is all about, dude.
Yeah, it's a conversation.
We're like idiots. And one of the things you mentioned in the scheduling thing, though, that I kept thinking about, that one of our viewers kept asking, why is there not more big events in Texas? And really, that's kind of a state decision. I mean, number one, it's got to do with the incredible investment they put in managing their resource. I mean, they have slots in a lot of lakes, which makes it difficult to have a pro event. And that's what the TTBC or Toyota Texas Fest, as it's known now, was founded on. That's the whole. That's where the whole catch, weigh, and release, concept was brought to life. You know what I mean? And Gary Klein was involved in those. We were all involved in that. You know what I mean? So it's not an us against them thing here that I'm saying. But Texas pushes more of their big bass program. Texas pushes more of their slot program and more. That's how they promote their fisheries. Other states do different things, and things change in different times. But that's also what makes events being in Texas so special, because it doesn't happen that often. So, I mean, that just answers that question. And man, we are really screwing up time-wise this week. What is our next topic?
What is, are you surprised, Dave? Are you surprised? So we had a question from Scott McFalls on YouTube, and I wanted to throw this one at you. I think this one's very interesting. He wanted to know what would happen if we limited the pros to $2,000. Here you go. There's $2,000 to spend on electronics max in events. He wanted to know how that would impact it, the overall scope of the sport, what our opinion on that would be. And secondly, he wanted to know, would it change the anglers that dominate the sport? Dave Mercer.
First thing it would do is really piss off the electronics companies. I mean, they would be in every marina and every retailer that sells a graph or a trolling motor or a shallow water anchoring device, all of that stuff.
That's a good point. That all fits into electronics technically. I think he's probably meaning depth finders, fish finders, but regardless, that's all electronics.
Yeah.
Slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope, and I think it's just one of those things that people will always bring out. I think, number one, it would change things. I think you would see a lot of anglers that the learning curve would go back to being a lot longer. I mean, there is a lot of anglers that are very proficient with it, and they can shorten that learning curve very, very quickly. So I think it would affect things that way, but I think ultimately it wouldn't affect things that much. I think people don't give these anglers enough credit, and it doesn't matter at what circuit you're talking about. These guys are the best of the best, and they figure out, they unearth every single little nugget. And I mean, they did it before I worked for the Elite Series. You know what I mean? I remember the first time they came to Erie. I remember, and there was no side imaging. There was no live sonar. There was none of that stuff that's happening now was available then, but they still unearthed it. They still figured it out. I mean, I think it would change things, but just for a very short amount of time and just for very few events. But it's never... just I know you'd love them to go out with 3 rods. I know you'd love them to go in portage. It's never gonna freaking happen. I mean, it's the world. It's, how would Formula One be if they just drove my rental car? Would so and so still win? Well, yeah, probably he would.
Yes, he would. I love that argument. I've talked about it many times, but let's see those boys fish without those fancy graphs and boats. Like, I'll be honest with you, sir, they might beat you in a canoe. These guys are really, really good. Really good.
There's a reason I'm a MC.
And that's the reason that I am the LD with 2 podcasts now. And we would like to thank you all for listening to not 1, but 2 LD and the MC, and we can't
stop. We're not stopping.
We're not stopping.
We have to address the giant. If we don't talk about the freaking classic, dude, there is going to be so many. Hit thumbs down just because he thought about not thinking about that. Do not hit thumbs down, please.
Don't hit thumbs down, please. Please don't hit thumbs down. We can't afford it.
The classic.
I know that happened schedules. This week. It was so, to me, it wasn't a big deal.
Explain it to me. I don't get what's happening. What is the theory?
So there are 2 tournament trails, Dave. I don't know if you're aware of this.
I am.
Bass fishing 2, 3 coming up, but 2 major tournament trails at play right now. One of those being the Bass Pro Tour. Just to get you caught up real quick, a lot of guys that used to fish for Bassmaster are now over there. Okay. They're part owners in that organization.
Probably going a little deeper than you needed to.
Yes, I got a little deeper than I needed to, but I wanted to get you caught up to speed. And if anybody was just listening for the first time. So now they have a regular season Bass Pro Tour event scheduled on what is, in my opinion, the biggest tournament of the year every year and probably always will be, I would think, and that is the Bassmaster Classic. So, Dave Mercer, opinions. Let's hear them.
Well, but I need the facts because I do know that Boyd was on Bass Talk Live, and so what there is some muddiness here because in my head, dude, I mean, Bass got that date when they put out the press release that said the Classic's going to be on this date in this location, which was at least 6 months ago. But
whenever. Yeah.
What didn't I know?
Well, in Boyd's from his own words, Bass scheduled on top of them. They had their dates on their website prior to the Classic release, and now, hey, and they schedule 200 tournaments a year over there at Big 5 MLFLW, and so what is kind of that was how I took it. And I've read some comments. Some people believe that. A lot more people don't, comments I'm reading. So I don't know. I think it's very tricky. And I think at the end of the day, regardless of who we're pointing fingers at, it's the freaking Bassmaster Classic, man. It's the Catalina wine mixer. At the end of the day, it takes precedence over everything.
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys are the Big 5, but it is the big one. Just so and it is the big one that is the reason that I know who Boyd Duckett is.
No doubt.
The big one that. So, I mean, I get it. There's competition. It's a free market, and Boyd is a bajillion times more successful than I will ever be at anything. Honestly, like when it comes to business, I shouldn't even be talking in the same world. But when it comes to bass fishing, all I got to say is, why don't you want to be there, Boyd Duckett? I mean, honestly, I'm going to push this aside and look at that little camera right there and be like, the Bassmaster Classic. I mean, here's what I honestly feel. I couldn't fathom a time or place, you know what I mean, where I didn't want to go to the Classic. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be part of that. And there's going to be a time when I don't work for Bass anymore. You know what I mean? Whether they can me or
this blows up and we don't need anybody else.
But I don't see how. Like, I mean, I'll be at every Classic. You know what I mean? I've watched Kevin during every weigh-in, whether he's part of that Super Six or not. He watches everyone. I know Skeet does. I know. So why wouldn't you? I mean, if we really want to grow the sport, if we really I think we should grow the sport together. Well, let's grow it together. But we're going to start growing it together. I mean, get into horse racing. Don't show up at the Kentucky Derby. You might as well. I mean, it just, to me, it's insane. And if you were really proud of what you're doing, you'd want to be there and you'd want to get your voice heard. That's, I guess, what I just did.
I think so. I think that's what you did. And I could not agree more. I think it puts the fans in a terrible position. I think it puts the anglers and it puts the sponsors in a terrible position. That's just the way I see it. What do I know? I'm just a little old LD on LD and the MC.
And I'm the MC, and we are out. Cowbell. Let's finish it with cowbell.